So I'm going to show you a nifty trick to fussy cut using your Bloc Loc templates. Did you know you could fussy cut with these? So right now I'm in the middle of making this quilt. I'm going to have a blue star and a red star. So I've got a triangle and a square here and a kite and a square here. But this fabric was kind of cool because of this sort of beaded print that was on here. So I'm going to show you how I did that, but on my blue fabric. So here's the shapes that we're cutting out. We're cutting a triangle and a square. Here's my red piece. And a kite and a square. Here's my red piece. Okay. The biggest thing you want to remember when you're trying to fussy cut is to line up the same thing all of the time. The center part of your triangle and a square ruler has little grooves in it. There's little crosshairs right here. I always like to use the hanging hole as a reference as well. The thing you want to remember when you're fussy cutting is that this side of the triangle is the side you want to focus on. This side of the triangle, part of it's going to get cut off. So when you're looking at the ruler, make sure you can read the logo. If it's this way, it's upside down, and if it's this way, it's backward. So make sure you can read the logo. It's the same thing on the kite and a square ruler. There's crosshairs on here as well, and you can see the logo. This stuff here is traction tape. I've used this so much that the traction tape isn't sticky anymore. It's picked up lint, but it actually works better once it's picked up some lint, because then when you put it down on your fabric, it doesn't slide. It gives it traction, okay? This one I haven't used as much, so my traction tape isn't all linty yet. It still works. All right, so what I'm gonna do is, if I wanna make this shape right here, but in my blue, the way that I did that was I just picked a reference point. And the reference point that I chose was this. It was lining up the circle in that little snowflake right there. So I lined up the circle in the snowflake, and then my crosshairs that run up the ruler, I lined them up with those beads right there. And then I just cut all the way around the fabric. So we're gonna do that with our blue. I'm gonna show you how I cut both of my shapes out. Here's a shape that I can use here. Here's one that I can use here. But you'll see when I line these up, I can't use both of them. So you might want to think a little bit strategically about where to cut them out so you get the most. Fussy cutting means waste. It's okay. Save those other bits and cut them up into 2.5 inch squares or whatever. If you want to get the cool effect, you're going to have to waste some fabric. So I lined up the circle in the middle of that star. My crosshairs run straight up and down those beads or pearls or whatever that shape is. Then I'm going to cut on all the sides of my template. Make sure that when you're cutting, you're going just slightly past the edge so that you don't have little uncut pieces. So I cut the two sides and then I turn it and cut the other sides. Since I've got my traction tape on there, honestly, it's going to kind of stick to it. So when you pick it up, you can peel it off then. All right, so now I've got a red one and a blue one that look exactly the same. And then when I put them into my pieces, they're going to line up. Now when I cut my triangle in a square, I'm cutting a different shape. My triangle in a square is going to feature these ornaments. And I lined it up just a little bit differently, but I did the same thing. I took my little hanging circle, and here's my crosshairs. I lined up my hanging circle with this little snowflake here, and then I took my crosshairs up the middle of the base of the ornament. Make sure that whatever you really want to see is at this end. Also make sure that whatever you want to see, that there's at least a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides, because when you sew the sides of your triangle on, you're going to lose a 1/4 inch on both sides. So there's just some things to play with. You can try them out however you want to. If you don't want this, so a couple things to pay attention to. With this fabric, this one had snowflakes at the bottom and this one didn't. I would pay attention to the fact that the crosshairs go down the middle and the top of the ruler hits at the very top of that ornament brace. So you could come down to here, line up the top of the ornament with the brace, and then make sure that your crosshairs go off the bottom. Okay, so there's lots of ways to play with this. Get you some printed fabric, start cutting out shapes. You are going to have a bit of Swiss cheese once you cut this all up. So you're going to have big gaping holes like this. What I do with that is I take all my Swiss cheese. I tend to be a bit of a fabric hoarder and I don't want to throw anything away. But if I have a big old piece of fabric that's a whole bunch of Swiss cheese, it just gets on my nerves and I won't use it. So I have a video on what to do with your crumbs. What I do is then I take a 2.5 inch square And I just cut out anything that's 2.5 inches and I throw that in my scrap bin, and then I let myself throw the rest away or throw it in my crumb bin. All right, so now you know how to fussy cut with Bloc Loc templates.